Hi guys, Viteo here. Today I'm giving you my ultimate guide for Tales of Iron. It is aimed to help you complete the game on its hardest difficulty, but it is also useful if you're a beginner player. All of the advice I will give is based on solid 100 hours of gameplay, and in this guide we will cover base combat, currencies, ammunitions and consumables, armor types and resistances, weapon categories and types, weight management, how to get all weapons in the game, early and late game tips. Hopefully at the end of the video you will be fully prepared to tackle every boss and ultimately complete the game on the Bloody Whiskers difficulty. First, let's start with the basics. Tales of Iron have your typical Souls-like controls. We have fast attack, heavy attack, a roll, and a block button, as well as very common indicators of parrying and unblockable attacks, respectively yellow for parryable attacks and red for attacks that must be avoided at all costs, or you will receive damage even if you block it with your shield. This is all covered in the tutorial part at the very beginning of the game, so you should already be familiar with the concepts if you already played the game at least a little bit, but I decided to touch on them briefly. One thing I might add to it is something that the game does not show you is the ability for Reggie to turn automatically and block the incoming projectile if you're facing the opposite direction. Also, don't forget that there are benches where you can recharge your ammunitions, also change your gear, and of course refill your bug juice. In the game, we have three types of currencies: gold, iron, and monster parts. Three types of ammunitions: arrows, crossbow bolts, and bullets. And two types of consumables: sprints and poison. The gold is given when you complete quests around the map and serves you primarily to advance the story forward. You need to go to rebuild your fort, and also for some specific quests later in the game that buys you some trophies if you can afford it, of course, and some essential items. The monster parts are used for buying munitions and poison, and together with the iron are used so you can buy prints of new weapons. Iron and the monster parts are also used as a requirements in some side and main quests. Lastly, the poison is very useful against any tough mob, especially early game, as you don't have strong weapon at your disposal. The poison will boost your weapon damage, although the boost is lower on the hardest difficulty. For the ranged weapons, I recommend you use bows and guns. The bow is light and have a lot of ammo, and the legendary version is pretty decent. The guns are heavier but more powerful. Also, they hold less ammunition, so keep that in mind. The crossbow, generally I don't recommend. While it's more powerful early game, it is slower and it keeps you in place during the fire animation, which is a big no-no in my opinion. There are three types of armor categories in the game: light, medium, and heavy. and all of them share some additional stats called defense. You can see the defense bar right here. You can carry helmets, shields, and body armor. Each body armor provides some specific type of resistance represented by the types of enemies that you will encounter at some point during your play. You can see them in their order right here. We have frog resistance for frogs, mosey resistance for mosies, mole resistance for moles, and grub resistance for, you guessed it, for grubs. There are also two types of enemies that are not represented with the respective armor. The undead enemy, located below the Crimson Fort in the Forbidden Tombs, and the Stalker, which you find mostly in the sewers near the Ranger's Lodge, and in the Motown. When you access the old sector, you can also find one in the Motown arena. The frogs and the grubs and the moses are your primary enemies you will encounter in the game. The moss will come a bit later in the game, and they represent the few gladiator fights where the mole armor will be needed if you want to progress further and earn the gold you will need. Now, if I have to be honest with you, the resistances are not that useful in the lower difficulty that much, so if you're playing on easy or medium, you won't get punished as much if you happen to wear an armor that does not match with the enemy type you're fighting. However, on the Bloody Whiskers difficulty, wearing the right types of armor is essential to your very survival. Just a quick example, let's say you're wearing a grub armor and you encounter a single mosey bug. If you get hit, there's a very high possibility you get one-shotted, especially early game. Let's talk about the weapon types in the game. There are three: swords, axes, and spears. Each weapon have its associated power to it, as you can see right here. Throughout your play, you will encounter various weapons from chests around the world or from the bosses. That goes through as well for some armor. You can carry one-handed version and two-handed version of those three types. The one-handed weapons have faster attacks, while the two-handed versions can destroy barriers when charged, as well as knocking down enemies if you manage to hit them with the charge attack of your two-handed weapon. I think I forgot to mention that you can still block with your two-handed weapon. Now let's talk about the weight management. In my opinion, is the most important mechanic you need to be aware of, especially if you wish to tackle the hardest difficulty in the game. It is represented by this bar right here. And each piece of equipment you carry on your body have an associated weight to it. Your weight status is indicated by the icon right here, and it will affect the distance you can cover with a single row. I highly recommend you stay within the nimble state represented by the feather icon, because on the Bloody Whiskers difficulty, although your defense stat still matters, your primary goal should be to avoid getting hit, so I would not recommend heavier builds. Now, if you're an achievement hunter, you will need to find all of those sweet prints and weapons and give them to your brother the smith. My advice for it is to do your best to discover the whole map, and if there are areas that you can't access, I advise you to wait until you get the gas mask from the Motown later in the game. Also, some weapons can be hidden behind the little puzzles, but don't worry, they are simple to solve. However, there are some there is an optional quest that will require some more work. Throughout your journeys, you'll come in possession of some strange statues. Those statues are used to open one very ancient vault. If you manage to do that, you fight one very mean boss, defeat it, and you shall get the key to his stash. In it, you'll find additional prints and armor you will need for the achievement. Also, keep in mind that the bosses from the added DLCs also need to be done. If you happen to kill the Watch of Greenward, all of the chests you haven't gotten yet become visible on the map, so you can go and collect them. Now, I'm keeping the exact location of the statues hidden to encourage you to explore the game and find them yourself, but rules still apply. If you explore the home map, visit every shop, complete every quest, you'll get everything you need. Still, if you don't care about spoilers, let me know and I'll make a separate video about the location of each statue. Now about the early and late game tips. I will start this section here by showing you the best way to farm your monster parts early game, as well as getting some additional iron. In general, you can get your monster parts from the enemies you kill. However, by smashing every pot you came across, you have a chance to loot not only monster parts but some additional iron. Later in the game, iron becomes available in the mines, so you'll be able to farm it from there as well. Now let's talk about the combat. Another additional thing that I failed to mention is that you can actually perform a shield bash by holding your shield and tapping the fast attack button. This technique is not very useful, but early game when you don't have access to your two-handed weapon, you can still try and knock back a smaller enemies. For example, the weaker flying grubs, you'll be able to knock them down if you use your shield. I highly recommend that you stay calm, and when you engage an enemy, try to learn its attacks so you can be better prepared if you happen to encounter the same enemy. If you happen to engage a fly mob early game, parrying the yellow attacks is vital in order for you to ground them and kill them, so get better at parrying. Once you have a bow or any other ranged weapon, it is better if you kill any flying mob from a distance. Also, don't be shy and use your poison consumable. Also, I would like to let you know that even though the bosses themselves have a certain pattern, they can sometimes change it and maybe hop twice or charge at you twice and really caught you off guard. I really like that mechanic in the game, always keeps you on your toes, but please keep that in mind. Learn the boss's patterns, but also be aware that they can change it. Also, do all optional quests. This will grant you gold and armor and of course weapons, and they are also a way for you to increase your overall health. I will touch on this briefly. In general, the quests that your brother the chef will give you require of you to go shopping for some ingredients and also completing some errand quests like helping the farmer to rebuild his beehives. This, for example, will give you a much needed honey. So again, try to do all of the optional quests. You send them up. If you wish to know the exact way you get all the health upgrades, please let me know, and I will make a separate video about this as well. While you're exploring early game, you may come across some areas filled with toxic gas. Avoid them. Later in the game, you'll be able to buy an item, I already mentioned it, that will let you gain access to those areas, and you will need to go there if your goal is to get all of the weapons in the game. Also, those areas are home to one nasty optional boss. When you are in the crypts, there is one specific enemy that comes to mind, and I can't express this enough. Never engage the undead crossbowmen from close distance, as they have a very quick and devastating attack that can drain most of your health. Try your best to kill them from a distance. Now, late game, I recommend you engage the boss Ratter Rattenson as soon as you can, as he holds the strongest 100 weapon in the game that will make a quick work of most late game enemies, especially if you also use your poison. Another useful tactic would be to learn how to manage your bug juice. As I mentioned before, on the Bloody Whiskers difficulty, you'll be able to withstand 1 to 2 attacks before you get killed. That goes for the bosses, and 2 to 3 attacks for the mobs, also depending on the mob. Keep in mind that those numbers vary, as you can get more defense by wearing heavy armor. You may withstand 1 additional hit. However, there is a way to cheat a little. So whenever you are in the 1 hit threshold, try to take a little sip of your juice whenever you can. As long as you keep yourself above the 1 hit threshold, you should be able to withstand 1 additional hit. Keep in mind though that this applies if you wear the appropriate body armor and the resistance, and the early game is still easier for you to get one-shotted. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching, guys. This is my first attempt at making any guides, really. I really hope I did the game justice. If there is anything that I missed, please let me know in the comments. Consider subscribing to the channel, and also I would appreciate if you like the video. And don't forget to hit the bell so you're aware every time I post a new video. And with that said, I'll see you guys in the next video.